Back up on the mountain this morning. Isn't that pretty? A pretty picture. I just love the mountains. Class 4 today. Lessons from Sermon on the Mount. I told Keegan, I said, it's almost as if we've collaborated on this because he and I are on the same wavelength, talking about, a new kingdom, new citizens, and we're citizens in a new kingdom, and that's what we need to be. And he was referring to salt and light this morning, and that's what we did last week with salt and light. Were all y'all salty this week? Did you go out and salt something? Not assault, but did you go out and try to spread a little salt this morning, spread a little light, get out of your salt shaker? I hope you did. This week we're going to talk about law, one of our favorite subjects. And really, he's not talking about the law, he's talking about righteousness of the citizens, what a good citizen should be. Jesus talks about the relationship between the law of Moses and his law. Sometimes we might ask, does the Old Testament even apply to us at all? We know we're not under the old law, but does it even apply to us? Quite simply, yes, it does. Every law that is given in the Old Testament, except one, is in the New Testament. Y'all know what that one is? We didn't worship yesterday, so we don't have to keep the Sabbath day. But every one of the other ones is in the new law. So everything in there applies to us. When Jesus preached this Sermon on the Mount, the people who he was talking to were good Jewish people, good Hebrew people who had studied and lived under the Mosaical law all their life. They knew the Old Testament law. Can you imagine if somebody walked into our presence today and said, I'm going to change everything you've been doing religiously and we're going to do it differently? Boy, we would say, no, we'd be reluctant to do that. So I imagine that the people who were hearing Jesus this time were wondering this same thing. Is he going to change things? Is it going to be different? Are we going to have to learn a new law? And they had a lot of questions. So he begins early in this sermon by telling him that they shouldn't think for 1 minute that he had come to get rid of the old law. He says, I'm not getting rid of it, and that had to be a relief to him. His purpose is not to change the law, but to expand on it, to put it into your heart, to put it into your lives, to make the citizens of the kingdom somebody that's going to live the law. Let's start reading at Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called, notice where he puts them, least in the kingdom of heaven. He's talking about people in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you, unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall in no means enter the kingdom of heaven. He talked about mentioned the kingdom of heaven 3 times in this little few verses. So he's serious about the kingdom of heaven. What is a jot and a tittle? stay still right behind this pulpit. He says if I'll quit putting this in my pocket, that maybe it won't have the dead spots. So we're going to put it right up here, and maybe we won't have the dead spots. What's a jot and a tittle? Is it on? Uh-huh. Hey, it's working all right. Don's got this. Whoop. Down a little bit in the volume, please. A jot and a tittle, if we were putting that in our modern day vernacular, we'd say till every I is dotted and until every T is crossed. That nothing's going to pass away. Till the I's are dotted and the T's are... Now you say that to some of these younger kids, you know, they don't teach cursive writing anymore, so do they even dot I's anymore if they don't know how to write? Do they cross their T's? Wonder about that. Worry about that. How are they going to read the Constitution, which is written in cursive, if they can't read and write it? That's another subject. But in Jesus' time, a jot was the smallest letter in the alphabet. In Hebrew, it was kaf. And I did not attempt to even put a little thing up there to show you what it is. In Greek, it's iota, the smallest letter in the alphabet. So when he says not one little bitty letter is going to be overlooked. And a tittle is like that cross mark on the T. It changes a cursive small L to a small T. You put that little T. That's what a tittle is. It's the difference between a capital P and a capital R. That little whoop down there, turn that P into an R. It's just a little thing. That's how minute Jesus says the law is going to be in effect. Even the little bittiest letter or the little bittiest mark is still going to count until everything is fulfilled. But for us, what role does the Old Testament law play in our lives as modern Christians? In Romans chapter 6, verse 14, Paul tells us that Christians are not under the law yet. On the other hand, Paul quotes from the Old Testament all through his writings. So, yes, we're not technically under the law, but it's all in our new law. In Timothy chapter 3, Paul even writes, all Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, thoroughly equipped to every good work. Now, when he says all Scripture, he's including the Old Testament too. It's profitable. It's good for us to study the Old Testament. You got something to say, Jim, or are you just stretching? That's the only Scripture they had when Paul wrote. Very right. So, what other Scripture did he have? He says, it's good to read the old law for all these things, for instructions. So the Old Testament still does apply. The Ten Commandments are still relative to us today. He said, thou shalt not murder back then. We're going to cover that a little later in this lesson. It still applies today. We don't murder today. And we don't do all these other things. We don't steal. We don't kill. We don't do all the things that the law forbids. It's all in there. When Jesus refers to the law and the prophets, two things. He's referring to the law and the prophets. In the old Hebrew mind, the law was 5 books. The 5 books of Moses were the books of law. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, about to forget Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The 5 books that Moses wrote, that's the books of law. So when Jesus says the law, and then he says the prophets, that's all the rest of the old scriptures. So when he says the law and the prophets, he's saying all of it. From Genesis to Malachi. It's all good. He says none of it's going to pass away. What Jesus is saying in this verse that I didn't come to destroy but to fulfill is that just strict obedience to the law is not enough. Sure, I haven't killed anybody, but I hate a lot of people. I haven't stolen anything yet, but you just give me a chance, and I'm going to. Jesus says, it's not enough that you haven't stolen anything. If you intend to, that's not right. The old law just restricted behavior. God's law is a heart thing. If your heart isn't involved in keeping God's commands, you're just going through the motions. You miss the whole point if your heart's not in it. And that's what Jesus is telling these people, these citizens of the new kingdom, is get your heart involved in it. Matthew 23, and 24. We're a little ahead of what we're studying now, but applies here. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees. Boy, he picks on those people a lot, doesn't he? And we're going to find out why he picked on these people, the scribes and Pharisees, all the time in his teaching. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you're hypocrites. And that's what he says right here. For you pay tithe on mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. You blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. You take care of these little bitty things, but you forget the big picture. Your heart's not involved in it. They were so strict at keeping the law that they even paid all the spices in their kitchen. That they're going to take down to the temple a tenth of the spice that they had there. Now that is being strict, but they didn't love anybody. One of the scariest verses in the Bible, let's go back and look at it, is that last part. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. They're even giving a tenth of a spice. And he says, we got to do more than that. Does that mean we got to give 12% of our spices? No. It's talking about the heart. Your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees. To the people around the scribes and Pharisees, everybody thought they were perfect people. I mean, they were strict. They led a perfect, strict life. They kept every law. They quoted all the scriptures. And Jesus calls them hypocrites. They were more concerned with outward show instead of their inner righteousness. And Jesus is trying to put that righteousness in our hearts. The scribes and Pharisees in that time were so strict with their laws, they counted and they could tell you there were 248 commandments in the Torah, in the 5 books of the Pentateuch. 248 commands. And you know what? They kept a little tally book. Check them all off. Yep, didn't do that today, didn't do that today. 248 commands. There were also 365 prohibitions in the law of Moses. They knew exactly, number by number by number by number. Made it through the day and I didn't break any of them. I'm perfect. Jesus said, they're hypocrites. They're blind guides, and we're supposed to do better than that. Paul deals with that in 1 Corinthians 13. See if I've got that. Verse 2, where he says, though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, though I have all faith so that I can move a mountain, but I have not love, I'm nothing. Nothing. I can keep those 248 commandments and those 365 prohibitions every time, but I still don't like you. I am nothing. Very simple. So what do citizens in the new kingdom have to as their law? The next part that Jesus goes into is 6 deeper demands for citizens of the kingdom. There's 6 little demands here that he's going to cover next in the Sermon on the Mount. You know, he's talked about the Beatitudes. People are like this. You're salt and light. Get out and do something. The law still applies. And now he says, here's some deeper here that you need to think about in this one. Each paragraph in these 6 is introduced by the same contrast. You have heard it was said of old time, but I say. This is what you've heard, but I say. And sometimes they're a long way apart. Sometimes they're very close. But he says, let me add a little bit to each one of these. He's not contradicting the law in any of these cases. He's just correcting some of the misinterpretations of the law to tell them what God really intended. For example, the leaders were restricting the biblical commands against murder and adultery, the acts alone. Jesus includes our thoughts and our words. Their leaders restricted the command to love your neighbor to only those that you were close to your family, to your close friends. Remember one of Jesus' parables when a man asked him, said, Jesus, who is my neighbor? And what did Jesus tell him? He told a parable about the Good Samaritan. Who is my neighbor? It's that person you hated. This is a Jewish man that's laying by the road, beat up on the point of death. And a Samaritan, somebody that the Jews would have nothing to do with, who comes by and helps him. Who is my neighbor? It's everybody. The ones you like, the ones you don't like. Jesus includes every person in our neighbors. The first deeper demand that Jesus talks about is avoiding anger. Anger. Matthew 5:21-22. You have heard that it was said to those of old, the old part, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. Okay. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. That's pretty strict, isn't it? According to the scribes and Pharisees, if you didn't actually kill anybody, you kept the law. Jesus disagrees with that view. He expanded the restriction to words, to deeds, to anger and insults, as well as the physical act of murder. Insults are mentioned in these verses. That's what Raka means. Raka means stupid. You ever call anybody stupid? You're just stupid. Ooh, that's what raka means. If you're in danger, don't be doing that. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You ever heard that? You ever said that? Do you believe it? Uh-uh. Words can cut as deep as any knife you ever. Words, just hit my dead spot there. Words hurt. Words can kill. Raka. Stupid. None of us like being called stupid. That's an insult. And Jesus said, danger of the council. Lost this one. Whoever says, you fool. Now, why would that be so strict? Remember what was written in the Psalms? The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. So Jesus is drawing on this and saying, when you call somebody a fool, basically you're saying you're going to hell because you don't believe in God. You're a fool. Biblically speaking, you're a fool. He says, careful, 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 don't do it. So words are just as serious as murder in Jesus' law. Question. Can a Christian get angry? Is it okay if we get angry once in a while? Did Jesus ever get angry? Remember when he turned over the money changers' tables in the temple? That was a little bit of temper there. When he called the scribes and Pharisees hypocrites, blind guides, fools, he's showing a little bit of temper. It's okay. We get angry sometimes. Did God ever get angry? Oh, yeah. Remember the time of Noah? God got so angry with the whole world that he wiped out everybody except for one family. And that was the one family that was following God. He was angry. He wiped everybody out. So, yes, God had a little bit of anger sometime. When he sent the 12 spies into the land of Canaan to spy it out, and he says, here's your new home. Go see what it looks like. And they came back, and I love this lesson more than anything. 10 out of 12 of them, the majority says, we can't do it. There's big guys over there. There's giants over there. We can't do it. Is that what God sent them for? No, his instruction when he sent them, he said, just go over and see what kind of land it is. See if it's a good land. See if it's a bad land. Go see what kind of land you're going to be inheriting. And they came back and said, we can't do it. We can't do it. God got so disgusted with them, he said, okay, for the next 40 years, you're going to walk. You're just going to wander around, and every one of you is going to die. And none of you is going to go see it, except the two. The two that said, let's do it right now. We can do it. Whole lesson there. So God showed a little anger sometime too. Jesus showed a little anger sometimes too. How do we deal with our anger? Ephesians 4:26. Be ye angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. Be angry and sin not. Well, how is that possible? Give place to the devil. Where does anger come from? It comes from the devil. It says, don't let him get a foothold in there. Verse 31, he adds, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. Get rid of all of that. No place for that in a Christian's life. Question for you. Has anybody ever been upset with you, mad at you, and you didn't quite know why they were mad at you? If that's never happened to you, you've led a very sheltered life. Some people just get mad at us sometimes. I don't know why. He deals with that. Matthew, a little further apart, our next verse is in Matthew 5. He deals with it. Somebody is mad at us. Therefore, got a runny nose. If you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you. Now, he's not placing, is it my fault? Is it his fault? He doesn't even deal with that. I don't care whose fault it is. If it's because of something I did, all right, straighten out. If it's because of something they did, all right, straighten that out. If you bring your gift to the altar and remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled with your brother and then come and offer your gift. What? If I come to church Sunday morning and I remember, I had a fight with my neighbor next door yesterday and we never did get that straightened out. What does he say? Don't go to church. You know what he said? Leave your gift at the altar and go straighten that out and then come back. Our worship is not going to do us any good if we're still fighting with our neighbor. Go straighten that out first. Agree with your adversary quickly while you're in the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge, and the judge hand you over to the officer, and you're thrown in prison. Assuredly, I say to you, you shall by no means get out of there till you've paid the last penny. The NIV adds a little bit more to this. The first part, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother or sister, the NIV adds in there, has something against you. Do women ever get upset with each other? I see one going, Forgive her, Lord, she knows not what she says. Yes, women carry grudges too. They get mad at each other. Do they ever get mad at their husband? We're not going to deal with that one. So I think the NIV may have hit it a little on the head a little better. If your brother or sister has anything against you, if somebody doesn't like you, if you're having a squabble, don't even go to church. Don't even go. Leave. Straighten that out first. Notice in the text, like we said, Jesus doesn't deal with who's guilty and who's not guilty. Is it because something I did to my neighbor? Is it because my neighbor did something to me? He cut a limb off my tree yesterday. How dare him? Small stuff. Go straighten that out. Go. Sometimes we just have to say, I apologize. I'm sorry. We don't like to do that, do we? Jim, looks like you got something to say. You're just listening. Sometimes we have to be the bigger person. We need to take the initiative to settle differences. Never let it fester. Jesus even says, skip church and go and settle it. That's how serious being mad at somebody is. Have you ever said, well, if I just ignore it, it'll go away? If you just ignore it, then you may forget it, but it's not going away. Jesus says this is serious stuff. Anger. So the first thing that he says, if you want to be a citizen in the new kingdom, is avoid anger. Sure, you're going to get upset sometime, but straighten it out. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Straighten it out. Be the bigger person. Just say, brother, we need to straighten this out. What can I do? I apologize. We don't like to do that. Second thing Jesus deals with, we still got some time, is citizens in the new kingdom will avoid lust. We don't like to talk about this, do we? Matthew 5:7-30. You've heard that it was said of old. Here's the old one. You shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, whoever looks on a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right, 2 R's, fat finger. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it's more profitable for you that one of your members perish than your whole body be cast in hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Cast it from you, for it's more profitable for you that one of your members perish and that your whole body be cast into hell. Here again, the religious leaders were attempting to limit the scope of God's 7th commandment. This is the 7th commandment. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Not a lot of detail. One of those 248 commands, thou shalt not commit adultery, that they checked off. Didn't do that today. I'm good. But I sure did go, woo, when somebody walked by. Jesus says, if you look at somebody, you might as well have already done it. Now that's strict. In their interpretation, a person kept the commandment if they didn't do the actual act of adultery. The true meaning of God's command is a lot wider and deeper than that. Just as the prohibition about murder includes our thoughts, our words, and our insults, prohibitions surrounding adultery include our looks and our imagination, our mind. Sadly, today's fashion trends are getting more and more suggestive every year. Y'all agree with me on that? I'm so old, I remember when modesty was a good thing. When women and girls didn't let it all hang out. That's just the way things are now. And sometimes we pass it, well, that's just the fashion today. It's getting more suggestive every day, and sadly, some of our members here even embrace that. We're not isolated just because we're in our little salt shaker here. Sometimes it happens here. What can we do? I remember one of our former presidents, we're not going to call him by name, who made the statement that I have even committed adultery in my heart, as if he was proud of it. And the news media made a big joke out of it. Y'all old enough to remember when that president said that? Yeah. Songs have even been written about this. One of my favorite artists from Nashville, Ray Stevens, put out a song called The Streak. And remember what his advice was? Don't look, Ethel! Yeah. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Don't look, Ethel. Just make a big joke out of it, you know. Jesus says it's more serious than that. He doesn't treat it like a joke, and neither should we. Living together without getting married is all too common in our society today. And where did it all start? With a simple look. I looked, I liked. We teach our children a song in their Bible classes, don't we? Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. For your Father up above looks on down on you in love. So be careful, little eyes, what you see. Too bad we as adults don't sing that sometime. when something goes by that we shouldn't be looking at, we ought to just sing that little song to ourselves. Be careful, little eyes. What you see, I'm going to look up. I'm going to look over there. I'm not going to look at that. If we as adults remember that little song, we might avoid it. It's important to notice that Jesus connects the eye to the heart. He gives some startling advice here. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. He's not advocating self-mutilation here. He's advocating self-denial. Ray Stevens' advice is good for us all. Don't look, Ethel. When you see something that might tempt you, turn your head. Look the other way. Walk away. If there's a place that's a temptation to us, go to this place. There's temptation all over that place. Don't go there. Very simple. So the first two things in his 6 demands of his citizens is avoid anger, avoid lust. Don't look, Ethel. The next subject, which we got just a few minutes for, faithfulness in marriage. Faithfulness. A deeper righteousness in marriage and divorce. Divorce is a subject that many religious leaders avoid. We don't hear many sermons on divorce, do we? Because it's so prevalent in the world today, and sadly enough, it's prevalent in the church today. Depending on what statistics you read, they're now saying that the divorce rate in America is around 50%. That's half of the couples that get married are going to end up in divorce. That's terrible. That's horrible. It ought not to be that way. There was a time when divorce was something that everybody looked down on it. But now it's common, even in the church. It's controversial. It's complex. And we're not going to go into a lot of detail on that. But let's see what Jesus has to say about it. Furthermore, it has been said, here's this side, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. Simple, easy, done. Okay. But I say to you, whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality, and he causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery. That's straight from the mouth of Jesus. These 2 verses do not represent everything that Jesus and that the New Testament has to say about marriage and divorce. There's lots of scriptures in the New Testament dealing with marriage and divorce, and I encourage you to read those if this is a problem for you. It's one of the thou shalt nots in the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Jesus is looking at the end result of divorce. It can cause adultery, which is a thou shalt not. That's the end result. Now, like I say, there's a lot of scriptures, there's a lot of counselors that can help with that. In the first century, divorce was treated very lightly, and it was easily granted. All a man had to do to divorce his wife was just write her a piece of paper, said, I divorce you. There, gone, get out of my house. Done. That's all it took. Sadly, in our society today, it's almost that easy, isn't it? Incompatibility. We don't like each other, so we're going to get divorced. We got in an argument, so I'm going to divorce her. That's not what. It's almost that easy in our society today. Jesus gives one reason except sexual immorality. Then he says, it's okay. Jesus took marriage very seriously during his time. When God instituted marriage, he intended it to be exclusive and permanent. He said a man and a woman would become one. Adam was the only man in history that could truthfully say to his wife, honey, there's not another woman in the world for me. Okay, I'll let that sink into the rest of you. Since then, there's a lot of women out there. Adam's the only one could ever make that statement. God intended marriage to be the two become one. Do you ever get in an argument? Do you ever get in a fight? Yes. Is it all unicorns and roses, a whole marriage? No. But how does Jesus say, and the whole New Testament say, deal with it? A whole lot of times in the Bible, husbands and wives are told to love and forgive each other. We've all got flaws, don't we? Yes, I have some flaws. Sometimes we're not very lovable, right? Quit smiling, Sandra. Sometimes we're not real lovable. How did Jesus say deal with it? Love, forgive, live together. He even compares the relationship between Christ and the church as a marriage. They love each other. They forgive. We do things for each other. There's only one reason that justifies a divorce: unfaithfulness by either party. It's no coincidence, I think, that Jesus talks about faithfulness in marriage right after talking about lust. Where did it start? Where did unfaithfulness start? With number 2 up there. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Avoid that, and you won't have this problem. So he's giving these guidelines to people, expanding on what the Old Testament just deals with the act only. He's dealing with what's in your head, what's in your heart. Be careful, little eyes. Don't look, Ethel. And you won't have this problem with divorce. The two discussions go together: avoiding lust and faithfulness in marriage. Love each other. Forgive each other. We're not easy to love sometimes. Especially since I retired. My wife and I spend a lot of time together because we're both retired and we're at home. Thank goodness Creekside Church of Christ owns 40 some odd acres here, and I've got a key to the tractor and to the lawnmower. And sometimes my wife tells me, honey, don't you need to go mow some grass today? And I say, yes, ma'am. And I get out and I ride that mower, I ride that tractor around out here. In other words, get out of my sight. You laugh, but isn't that the best thing sometimes? The absence makes the heart grow fonder. So sometimes, honey, go mow some grass. Go ride the tractor. We just need to have some alone time sometimes. Enough on marriage and divorce. God is calling his followers to love, to forgive, and to be peacemakers. We covered peacemakers back in the Beatitudes. Be peaceful with each other. Don't squabble. Don't let it fester. Be faithful. Avoid anger. And that's how, this is the first 3 things he gives, how citizens in the kingdom of heaven are going to live in this world. Any comments this morning? Go out and be salty. Next week, we're going to get into number 4, oaths, being truthful. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face to shine upon you and give you peace. next week.